Hey, welcome back to the Health Bridge. Dr. Pedram Shojai here with Dr. Anna Cabeca. We are talking about intimacy, connection, and God. I love it. This is one of my favorite types of conversations because there's a lot more to a clinical encounter than just you getting information and getting a prescription or something with your physician. And we are with an expert physician who has crossed over and is talking about cool stuff because she knows it matters. Let me give you a little bit of background on our woman here. She's basically championed women's health in a way that is unique and remarkable. Dr. Anna Cabeca went to Emory University, trained and board certified as a gynecologist and obstetrician. She's also board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. So has done a lot of the work over here and is an expert in functional medicine and women's health, specialized in bioidentical hormones, replacements, and also natural alternatives. She's also the creator of Mighty Maca, which is an awesome green drink I drink every single morning. Here it is. And I've been drinking it for some time and it really does help. Also does a lot of online education, including sexual CPR, which I can't wait to get into here, and women's restorative health. And so she helps women feel good. So Dr. Anna Cabeca, welcome.
Thank you, Pedram. It's wonderful to be here with you, as always.
Love seeing your smiling face. And so let's get into this and start with the question, why don't women feel good? Like, why is this even a problem?
Oh my gosh. Okay, where do we begin on that? We could start with the imbalance in healthcare diagnosis between the masculine and the feminine. But let's just really talk about the hormone disruptors that our century of women is facing, which is unprecedented. And so what I've seen are, younger ages of perimenopausal symptoms, and that lead to unnecessary medications, surgeries, etc. So symptoms like, chronic fatigue, menstrual migraines, PMS or premenstrual syndrome, depression, anxiety, irregular bleeding, heavy bleeding, painful bleeding, ovarian cysts, breast cysts, thyroid abnormalities, all that are interrelated from the functional level at a very similar, cause. So we see this just kind of hormone disruption, this inflammation, hormone imbalance, and adrenal dysfunction, which I call the devil's triad, the devil's pitchfork. And those three things together create, kind of like a miserable cascade of symptoms.
Yeah, and that's the stuff the women in our universe are dragging around every single day and toughing it out every single day. Stiff upper lip, whatever you want to say, to just get through your day, and just you take for granted that maybe sometimes you just don't feel well and that's normal, but that's not normal, right? That's not where we came from. That's not how we are used to feeling back, like kind of genetically, historically. And today it's just like it is what it is. Take an Advil, take this, take that. Just move on.
Oh, we're designed to be the backbone of society, right? We are designed for, especially as we enter perimenopause and menopause, is this enlightened stage, right? The wise women of the tribe, the one that others come to for counsel, because we've got this enhanced clarity. But what are my patients, what have my patients historically come in with? Brain fog, mental fatigue, sense of cloudy thinking, disorganized thoughts, loss of focus. That's not how we were designed at all. So part of my journey has been in this discovery and really figuring out what it takes to be what I like to call, energized enlightenment, to be in the state of energized enlightenment, which is where we belong. But let me tell you, I can tell you, I had not felt there. I've been like at the total opposite of that, So it's certainly been a journey and a process, and part of my process has been with God's hand in it, showing me the good and showing me the absolute devastation and bad. So that's where.
You mentioned the word God. I mean, so we come from different backgrounds, and we meet and see eye to eye in a lot of things, right? But you use the word God pretty freely in your practice, in everything that, I mean, and you're not practicing it anymore. You've kind of retired from practice. You've been doing a lot of kind of high level work, but you have been in this world for a long time, and you drop the G word like nothing. It's always there. And so how do you integrate that faith? And I want to get into your backstory in a second, but how do you integrate that faith and what you found in that with the health and the healing and your conversations that you have with your patients?
Well, let me tell you that has been part of my journey. And you'll hear me lecture to, 1,000 medical doctors, and I'll be like, my journey, my journey has been, one of divine intervention. That is for sure. And I was thinking about this question because, gosh, I can't remember not being um, in the practice of praying before I deliver a baby, praying before I operate, just asking God for help, for clarity. And I think part of that discipline and practice was being part of the experience versus multitasking down the hall, up in the OR. Like for example, if I'm doing a delivery, I'm totally centered with the patient, with the baby, with the whole spiritual experience of that, despite what's going on. And so part of we call it centering prayer or just being there. God bless this family, bless this experience. It's just part of my nature and really historically from my upbringing too. But let me tell you, there was a time I felt like there was absolutely no God, right? And ran around the world literally running away from God or, just seeking answers. Like there can't be, with the devastation that I experienced in my life, can't possibly be a God, right? And so I've come full circle once again to know that God has fully a hand in my life and in my ability to heal or to help others and to so many beautiful miracles. And whether we call it, I say God is love and that entire love experience. And for some people it's universe, for some people it's spirit, for some people it's Allah. It's a divine unity of the universe. And so for, me, I've looked and I've explored to find the answers as a truth seeker. I come from a generational influence of truth seekers. And so this has been kind of part of my journey and part of my evolution to where I am now and to the state that I believe, so many of us enter, especially as I enter the sixth decade, going into my 50s of life, to really have an enlightened clarity and heightened spiritual awareness. And part of my journey around the world was learning from other cultures' experience of God or divinity, from the poorest people in Indonesia, from the Andes, from the Saharan, from different places around the world to find the different experiences and expression of this amazing divine unity of love.
It's funny because we talk about it as kind of science and medical science and kind of religion being separate. But you look at most of these hospital systems; they're owned by the church, they're owned by some Presbyterian group, and there's a lot of that. You and I don't know if we've hung out enough about this subject. I'm also part of a hospitaller order through Malta and through the church, and I've done a lot of kind of barefoot medicine and kind of rural medicine, serving people. And it's all, meeting them where they're at in their faith. And so we should have a conversation about this, maybe take some cameras and go out to Ecuador somewhere and just do some service. Because I now that I'm hearing your story, it looks like we need to just go hang out internationally and do more of this. It is so rewarding, it is so powerful, it is so humbling to see where people are at. And so, you're in America and it's just like, stop eating so many ding-dongs versus you go to some place where they're just dying of kwashiorkor or something, and it's just absolutely a different story. And
Right.
you start
Right.
to see where faith comes in. You start to see where resilience comes in, and the resilience of the human spirit is very abundantly apparent in front of you with kind of the calamity out there. So we've danced around this a couple times now. You're no stranger to personal tragedy. And you've had some health problems and it's had some impact in your life. So can we talk about how you kind of came around full circle in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up from my mom's Middle Eastern, Catholic, Christian, many years growing up in Haifa, Palestine, now Haifa, Israel, and my dad, Portuguese, Catholic. So I grew up in this religious base of family, but with, like I said, truth seekers. Like, so I grew up in the United Nations, any race, any religion, they were part of our home life. And growing up as part of food as medicine. So I had that philosophy when I went to medical school. And I noted in my whole holistic health journey, my mom, who had her first cardiac surgery in her early 50s, one of 3 out of 11 children that came to the US, all 3 that came to the US died before the others in the Middle East, some still living. And that started me looking at what are our interventions doing? What is polypharmacy doing? And at that time, I was a resident in OBGYN at Emory. So I had like my mind blown open with this heartache of losing my mother, who was like, God, I should have been able to help her, right?
Mm.
Just such a wise soul that she was. And so that started really in depth journey into beyond the science. I was a researcher before I went to medical school. So I was digging deep. And then opening my solar practice as a National Health Service Corps scholar in Southeast Georgia, where the shrimp boats are and, have rural areas. So I came here, part of my service in my little solo clinic. I started having to treat people with the least expensive ways to get them better, get their families better, and figure that out on my own. And so that was part of my journey. And then being blessed with my children, and then we suffered in my family when my son was 18 months old in 3 days, a significant tragedy, and where my son lost his life. And he was, a baby, a toddler. And that is just devastation beyond devastation. And for me, who felt like I had God's hand in my life this whole way, coming from, rural Pennsylvania to Emory University. I mean, all this, God had his hand in my life. And then to lose my son, the spiritual, emotional, physical, mental devastation that all climaxed in was just, beyond words, as is hard to imagine. And with that came chronic pain. With that, in a matter of a couple weeks, putting my feet on the floor in the morning hurt, and depression, deep-seated depression, and the after effects of PTSD, and the hormonal loss, going from breastfeeding my baby 1 minute to not having another drop of milk. And breastfeeding moms know that if you miss a 4-hour window. So I experienced this physiologic trauma as well as all the other traumas at the same time. And then my husband and I tried desperately to have another child. And we were told permanent, irreversible infertility with premature ovarian failure, early onset menopause at 39 years old. The only way you'd have another baby is egg donation by my trusted Emory colleagues, right? The best of the best, handpicked by me. And I was living it. I was totally living it. And so that started, not to mention probably 90 pounds heavier than I am now, unable to lose weight, completely weight loss resistant, tremendous hair loss. I share this in my online educational videos, and you could see the tremendous physical consequences, not thyroid, but stress-related consequences. And so firsthand, I explored this, and I left my clinical practice for a year and traveled around the world, like I said, seeking answers, seeking just to escape, grieve in private, because I live on a small island. So all that was part of a healing journey that, I recognize now God had his hand in too, and met me along the way, even when I was trying to avoid all of that. And I came back pregnant. So I learned many of the things that I learned through, living above 11,000 feet in the Andes, living with a small population in Indonesia, traveling around the world and exploring the roots of healing, traditional roots of healing beyond what our Western culture knows, and already having a background in it to really dig deep and explore. And that was part of our healing, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and part of the journey. And so hence I created Mighty Maca Greens because I wanted all the tangible things that I was ingesting, et cetera, to come back with me. And it created this amazing blend of superfoods that have helped so many people and address those three causes of 99% of our symptoms: adrenal dysfunction, hormone imbalance, and inflammation. So we address those root issues. But that was part of the journey, right? I recognize that the nutrients and the food and that was part of the journey. So to come back from being irreversibly menopausal and infertile to being pregnant with my daughter, who's now 8 years old, totally gorgeous, incredibly smart, and just the light of our lives, and my other daughters are teenagers now. And so we had the physical healing. And then from that, Pedram, the after effects of PTSD and disconnect. And so what I've begun to lecture on was the post-traumatic stress results and chronic stress results that lead us to disconnect, isolation, divorce, chronic, diseases of all kinds, and how we can reverse those diseases as well. And we are, like in my faith, the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, within ourselves, and also in many cultures, we are a triune too. We are part, with divine, part spirit, and part human flesh. I mean, we've got the human flesh. If we focus only on the human flesh, I have a hard time healing someone completely, right? They're not going to stay there. Like food and exercise, that's not going to keep you healthy.
No.
There's a lot more to it. There's our surroundings, our environment, the people we're with, and bringing that into a lifestyle medicine, which I say creates this whole healing process.
And our connection. I mean, how can you be intimate with another if you can't be intimate with your own feelings, your own self? And so some people call that a connection with God. Some people call that, kind of enlightenment experience. And there's a lot of noise around the G word, right? People fight over this all the time. And personally, I tend to not use the G word because it's so charged, right? It's like, everyone's fighting over their definition of who that guy is, which is so ridiculous because it's not a guy and it's not, it's not a person and all that. So, it's a murky subject because there's so many people that are just kind of charged and embattled over it. But what we're talking about is your connection with source, right? Your connection with the source of all that is, like where we all came from in life. And, people can use whatever words they want.
Right.
How did this bring you back? You went up on a walkabout. You're up in the high Andes. You're doing what you're doing and finding yourself again after this calamity, this tremendous loss in your life, and then reconnecting and rekindling and kind of finding that fire again drove you back into a life of service. What did that do for you, and what did that do for the way you practice with people in your world?
Well, let me tell you that it has brought about this unifying aspect to my programs, to my teaching, to my new program that I'm launching called Magic Menopause, which is all part of my keto alkaline solution, right? So it's the term I dubbed, but it's part of regaining this energized body, right? Because we're more than physical flesh. We know, now we know about the fourth phase of water, right? Gary Pollock's work on the fourth phase of water. And so we're energized, charged beings. So how are we charged? And how are we connected? If God is the sun, we're a ray of the sun. Part of us is, right? We're like, if God's the ocean, we're a ripple in it. So in that sense of connection, connected all in one body to others. So in that essence, how are we connected to our brother? How are we connected to our spouse? And why I'm so passionate about healing intimate relationships, healing marriages, healing family ties, keeping those connections alive. Because part of this spiritual body that we're in has connected out sources, right? So our daughters, our father, our brother, our neighbor, you and me, connected for a reason, connected with a gift to share, and acknowledging that. And I think With me in my practice, I've looked at it towards teaching people discernment, whether it's, are you eating discernment? So, in what I mean by discernment is being able to choose, is this good for me in the long run, right? Is this, like, say you're choosing a spouse, is this the one I'm going to be with 50 years from now, which is what we want, right? So in discernment, is this the good choice for me? And I always joke with my daughter, now you have food and school lunches, not food. So we have food and not food. We have things that are good for us and things that are unhealthy for us. Are we acting in love? Are we acting in fear? Are we moving towards connection? Are we moving towards disconnection? Like, what are the actions we're taking as we live in our life? And so as a physician, looking at what is going to help you from the source, like from the root of your illness. Do we, choose bioidentical hormones? Do we choose, prescription drugs? Do we choose surgery? I mean, what are the choices long term? Are they going to affect you, or are they not going to affect you? So I started in my practice just looking at those aspects, but then finding some really amazing experiences with emotional connection to physical illnesses, and understanding like the whole concepts of forgiveness and for gratefulness as part of our practice. And how we've been forgiving today, what are we grateful for today? And so using those things, I think very clearly about a patient who had recurrent pancreatitis, a young woman in her early 30s, and she was coming in with recurrent pancreatitis after seeing internist, etc. She came to my office as a gynecologist, and it just was put upon me to ask her, like, unable to figure out why she would have recurrent pancreatitis. I said, is there something you're guilty about? Because we know the pancreas holds the energy of guilt. And she just broke down in tears. And, we talked about it, prayed over it, went home, she dealt with it, and then came back a month later, and she's never had pancreatitis again ever since.
Bam.
And there was no medical intervention there. And so that's part of discernment. That's part of being intuitive, and then trusting our ancient wisdom, because we know the energies that are attached to different organs.
That's not a conversation that's had in the halls of Emory, I don't think, yet. But it's the conversation that you found on the streets of Palestine. It's the conversation you found up in the high Andes. And it's really what's been missing from this medical model, which is very much algorithmic and, we tried it and we tried it again and we tried it again and God dang it, we can't figure it out. And it's like, well, there's something else. And getting into kind of the psycho-spiritual, emotional aspects of this, obviously was an unlock for this individual. But you and I see this every single day. I mean, I'm not in clinical practice anymore either, and so I don't see it on that level, but I see it in a million, testimonials and stuff coming in, stories that come in from our audience. And there's miraculous stuff happening every single day that can't be explained by the algorithms of Western medicine. And it doesn't mean that our understanding it doesn't mean that Western medicine is wrong. It just means that it's a growing understanding that's trying to kind of embrace the human experience, and it's been very reductionist, in its kind of early years, and now it's going through its adolescence, and we're realizing through functional medicine and through all these other kind of levels of learning that we're complicated, and B, there's a lot more to it than just enzymes and pathways. So you have been able to strike a very interesting kind of nerve in sexual healing with couples. And so this kind of continuation of intimacy has rolled into, I think you probably saved more marriages than most marriage counselors I know, because sexual healing and intimacy are very much a part of how we come together and we bond and we work things out with our spouse. So I'd love for you to speak to that.
So what I have found in working with couples, and whether I'm working with the wife or working with the husband or working with the single, is really a kind of a need to dig deep to find out, why is there lack of intimacy? Where has, Where has the breakdown begun? And I created a whole model around this that I put forth in my program, Sexual CPR. But there were two really key things that women and men need to know about each other that are so basically simple, but we really don't realize it. And after, interviewing and talking with patients all the time, I remember this, this would come up all the time. So I had one man, a couple in my office, and he goes, she loves sex when we have it, but she never wants to initiate it. And I don't get it because, she's responsive once we start. And I said, well, how do you end? He goes, well, I guess, I don't know. I said, well, the normal response for a woman is we just need 2 minutes of your time for intimacy, 2 minutes to talk, to relax, to have a sense of even more connection. So we need 2 minutes of intimacy before you roll over and go to sleep, knowing that oxytocin works differently in men and women, right? So you've both got oxytocin. It's making the man roll over and want to fall asleep. And the woman, she's like, hey, this is my connection time. I want this, more connection. I want to feel connected here. And it's very subconscious. It's just instinctual. It's how we're designed. And so I teach men, in just 2 minutes, taking that time, it's as long as it takes for you to brush your teeth, put on your socks in the morning, right? Shave, is spend that time really reinforcing what felt good, what did you like, listen, and then you can both fall asleep. So that's the really one secret that men need to know about women is that they need, after intercourse with oxytocin, that connection time, that intimacy time. And for women, we need to realize that their biggest gain for our men is that they know that they've made us happy. So when we're able to express our happiness, what felt good, and especially in times of intimacy, right? The best coach is a positive coach, that is their biggest reward. So women need to know that men need to know that they can make us happy, and men need to know that we need that intimacy and connection time. And so with that, the physiology from that, understanding the power of oxytocin and how post-traumatic stress, chronic stress, other disease states, and adrenal dysfunction can interfere with that ability to connect and can cause a great disconnect in relationships. And so kind of recognizing the missing pieces so that couples can work together to re-glue their relationship and actually reignite. I've had so many couples that are like, oh my gosh, the spark is back, the twinkle's back. We're better now than we were in our honeymoon as far as our intimacy level connection in our relationship. And when we're good at home, we're better at work. When we're good at home with our spouse, we're better wives, better husbands, and so better teammates. I mean, this is part of our design, that hormone of community and connection, oxytocin, is such an important essence of who we are and what is missing in relationships. I mean, I was talking to one man who said, well, his marriage counselor said, go ahead and have an affair and get it out of your system and just never tell her. I'm like, well, that is surely to doom your relationship. I mean, what are you thinking? We have a very medical term for that called stinking thinking. And it's just like, what would make you think that's okay? And so if people are getting advice like that, it's destructive to the relationship and from both levels.
That is terrible advice. From a marriage counselor?
Shocking, yes.
Yeah, that person needs to lose their license.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you are better with your spouse, then you have that the kind of camaraderie in that team that really helps make you stronger, helps make you feel like the home front is handled and you could go out there and charge and take on the world. If you don't have that settled feeling at home, man, the world's a rough place to begin with, and there's choppy seas, so you need that safe harbor. How much of this?
We invest in so many things, our car, our home, our kitchen remodel. But what's long-lasting importance through the process of discernment? Your marriage. Investing in your marriage, investing in date night, investing in family time. I mean, it's never too early to start, and it's never too late to start. Yeah, and it makes a big difference. So I know we've covered a lot today. Finding connection with God
absolutely important, whatever God is to you. Finding connection with your significant other and really connecting and understanding the difference of, kind of the ups and downs of oxytocin and how we respond differently through gender and all that. And then cortisol, obviously, we talked about stress a little bit and what it did to you. And what we can do about it, I guess, is how I'd like to kind of wrap this is, the stress management, the supplements we can take, and the practices of bringing kind of faith and connection and intimacy into our lives so that we aren't so strangled by stress.
I think a practice, a daily examination, or called the examine, a daily examine of our day is, it's just an important process, that a homework assignment to give people. First thing I used to do was just say 5 minutes of gratitude journaling. And I turned that into writing thank you cards, or, do some of both. So gratitude journaling. So in your examine at the end of the day, if you say, well, what am I grateful for? So connecting the body, the mind, the spirit, right, together. So what am I grateful for today? And what have I done to nourish my body and my mind today? What could I have done better? And then where did I see love today? Where did I see the face of God today? And I remember clearly looking at my daughter one morning thinking, oh my gosh, this is so the face of God, right? You don't always see that in your children, Pedram. I'm telling you, you're a young father. You may be seeing it a lot more often than with teenagers. Enjoy it. But, where did I see love today? Where was I love? Or where could I have been more loving as well? And in that process of like a meditated reflection, I have found to be tremendously healing and upgrading to our quality of life. So that in and of itself is an essential practice. You teach a lot of that, and that is so crucial. So those, meditative practice, stress release, evaluation of our life. Like I said, the dial. Did I act towards connection or disconnection? Where was my dial today? And especially when we think of the things we could do to nourish our body. And, where I've pushed clients now is to get into a state of ketoalkalosis and actually checking to see that they're in this state of ketoalkalosis, because that will give them a state of energized enlightenment and a whole bunch of clarity that we so need in our day and in our life. And one part of that certainly is healing nutrients, right? We want to eat healing nutrients. My formula, Mighty Maca, has 42 superfoods in it. It's very alkalinizing, and it combines to have multiple ingredients that are anti-inflammatory as well as adrenally supportive. And hormone balancing. So that's key. And making it into a food, so you mix it in your drink or your protein shake, is tremendously powerful to our body that is looking at food as information. And so giving it really balanced, healthy, clean stuff. And so that's one aspect, but also having, in our day, time outside, getting sunlight in our eyes, that isn't inhibited by glasses or contact lenses. So we're using, our solar panels, right, to take in energy to help our bodies balance and also become more alkaline. I say, Jesus went into the Garden of Gethsemane not for 40 days of deprivation, but to have that clarity to hear his Father's voice, right? So that's that keto alkaline state, using your fat for fuel and being part of nature. So in that alkaline state, and those two things together, we've been missing it. The keto guys, the paleo guys got it partly right. The alkaline guys got it partly right. But you put those two together and you actually test. So it created these test strips, urine test strips, so that you test and see that you're in this state of ketoalkalosis. Then you've got it, and you've got this tremendous amount of clarity that puts it, for us in the menopause, helps you with that brain fog, helps with the weight loss resistance, help with the joint pain and increases flexibility, et cetera. So that's crucial because we don't want isolation. When we don't feel well, we're in isolation. And oxytocin will bring us back into connection. And with that, intimacy, community, loving attention, self-acceptance, all those things come to a better state of being.
I would love for you to give us a link to get more information on this this test strip and what it is that we can do to be in keto alkaline. I mean, this is why the ancients fasted. This is why they would go off and pray in the woods. And so
Right.
this is huge. And so I would love to get a little bit more information on that. We're totally out of time, and I could talk to you forever. So give us a link to how to get in touch with you and do some of this testing, and also how to get some Mighty Maca, because like I said, I drink it all the time. I love this stuff.
I'm so glad. Well, at my website, drcabeca.com or dranac.com will take you there. On my wellness store, I have information on my test strip. Plus, I'm launching a whole program on keto alkaline. So just sign up to my mailing list and we'll be sending you more information. But start testing, because as a physician, it's like, okay, we're not going to rely on just a guess. We want some results. And for patients, it's so helpful to figure it out. And Mighty Maca is also on my website, or more information with my journey at mightymaca.com. But if you go to dranacabeca.com, that'll get you there.
Wonderful. Doc, love you. Thank you for doing the work that you do. I'll put the links in the show notes and stuff here as well. Keep up the good work. I really enjoy you, your energy, and everything that you're doing out there for people. So thank you for coming back and being of service.
Thank you, Pedram.